You ever get that, like, almost phantom buzz, you know? Like, even when your phone's totally silent,
Oh, yeah.
you still feel it, right? And then there's this urge.
To check it.
Yeah, gotta check, gotta see who's liked that post or, if those numbers are going up.
Totally.
It's like our phones are becoming like an extra limb or something, And today we're going to kind of dive into what's behind that feeling, especially when it comes to social media.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because you sent me this script, right?
Yeah.
Called Influencer Rehab.
Yeah.
Breaking Free from the Algorithm.
It's fascinating stuff.
It is. It is. Like, it really gets into that feeling of, being constantly plugged in and that pressure to, like, perform online and how those algorithms, right, they're working behind the scenes. They shape everything.
They really do. And it's interesting because the hosts of this Influencer Rehab podcast, Alex and Sam, they really hit on some key points, They're looking at why we feel this need to constantly check, to engage, to like be present online all the time. Right. Their goal, kind of like ours today, is to say, okay, how do we step back from that a little bit?
Yeah.
How do we regain some control? So our deep dive today is all about pulling out those insights from their conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like, what can we actually learn about these algorithms, and how can we use that to navigate this whole digital world, maybe a little more intentionally, a little more mindfully.
A little bit more on our own terms, right? Like, not just being pulled along by whatever pops up.
Exactly.
Well, they kick things off with this really central idea, right? Talking about the algorithm itself.
Right.
And Sam, one of the hosts, he uses this phrase, he calls it like a clingy friend.
I love that analogy.
Pretty vivid, right?
It is. It makes you think. Like, you watch one cat video, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly your entire feed is just cats.
All cats all the time.
All the time. And it speaks to that feeling of being kind of bombarded by similar content over and over again.
Right. Like, it's made up its mind about you based on like one little thing you clicked on.
Totally. But is it really that simple? Is it really just about being clingy?
Well, I mean, it's more than just being clingy, right?
Right.
We got to remember, these platforms have like a crazy amount of content.
It's overwhelming.
It really is, and they need some way to filter it.
Right.
Like, figure out what to actually show you.
Okay.
What you're most likely to click on, to like to engage with.
So when we talk about the algorithm, we're really talking about, it's like this whole set of rules,
processes, calculations.
What's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's like the secret sauce that decides what you see.
Okay, so the clinginess, I guess, it comes in when it's like, oh, you like this one thing.
Right. So here's more of that.
Here's a million more.
Even if that's not really what you want anymore.
Right. And I think that's where that feeling of being kind of stuck comes from.
Yeah.
Like, it's decided what you like and it's going to keep feeding it to you.
It's like it's trying to keep you scrolling.
Yeah, it's like a digital hamster wheel or something,
I like that analogy.
But then they talk about influencer rehab. And this isn't just about, people with millions of followers, right?
No, not at all.
It feels like it's more about our broader relationship with being online.
I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
It's really about stepping back and saying, like, okay, how much is this controlling me? And how can I be more in charge?
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to get caught up in that pressure to be perfect, to have the best photos, the most likes.
Right. To be constantly performing.
Exactly. And I think Influencer Rehab is kind of like a reminder that we don't have to do that.
Yeah. It's about finding a healthier way to be online, right? Like one that doesn't leave you feeling drained and anxious all the time.
Yeah.
And they even talk about this almost revolutionary act of posting a picture without a ton of hashtags.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It sounds so simple, right?
It does.
But in a world where it's all about being seen, being discoverable, it's almost like a rebellion.
Yeah, it's like you're choosing to opt out of that whole system.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, like, what happens when we stop thinking about those likes and follows so much?
Right. What happens when we just share for the sake of sharing?
Yeah. And Alex and Sam, they share some of their own experiences too, right? Alex talks about checking Instagram during his cousin's wedding.
Oh, no.
And I think we've all had those moments, right,
Yeah.
where the phone just kind of takes over.
Even when you know you should be present.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it makes you realize how strong that pull really is.
It's almost like a reflex.
Yeah, totally.
Like you don't even think about it. You just do it.
And Sam talks about deleting and then reinstalling social media
Oh,
apps
the clothes.
over and over again.
Yeah, it's like it's not good for you, but you can't help but go back.
It's that cycle, right? And then they bring on this former influencer, Jamie Rivers,
Oh yeah, what a story.
who compares quitting social media to leaving a cult.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
It is, but it makes you think about how all-consuming it can be.
It's like you're part of this whole system with its own rules and expectations.
Yeah, and it's hard to break free.
Totally. And Jamie's first piece of advice was to admit you're powerless,
They're
right?
powerless over what?
Powerless over the explore page.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you can't control what shows up there.
It's like this wild, unpredictable space, right?
Absolutely. You never know what you're going to see.
And then Jamie gives this really practical tip, right? Unfollow accounts that make you feel bad.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It sounds so simple,
It does.
but it could make a huge difference, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Like if you're constantly seeing content that makes you feel envious or anxious,
Mm-hmm.
getting rid of those accounts can really, really help.
Yeah, it's like taking control of your digital diet, right?
Exactly. You are what you consume, even online.
So we're starting to get a sense of the pull in some ways to push back.
Mm-hmm.
But the Influencer Rehab podcast, they don't stop there.
They go deeper.
They do. They get into the science behind why these platforms are so addictive.
Yeah.
And Sam talks about dopamine, right? This chemical in our brains that makes us feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And he compares apps to digital slot machines.
Interesting analogy.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think it's actually pretty accurate.
Mm.
Because these apps, they're designed to give you these little bursts of pleasure.
Mm.
Like when you get a notification or a like, your brain releases dopamine and that makes you want to keep coming back for more.
It's like a reward,
Yeah.
right?
And the thing is, you never know when you're going to get that reward, right? So you keep checking, you keep scrolling just in case.
It's like gambling.
Exactly. It's the same principle.
And they mentioned the statistic, I think it was, that people check their phones every 12 minutes.
On average.
On average, it's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is. It really shows how ingrained these habits have become.
Yeah, and it leads to this question that I think is so important, right?
What's that?
Am I scrolling mindlessly, or is this actually adding value to my life?
That's the $1 million question.
It is because we often don't stop to ask ourselves that, right?
You just get caught up in the scroll.
Exactly. And it's a question that can really change how we approach social media.
Absolutely.
So the Influencer Rehab hosts, they offer this rehab toolkit.
Okay, I like that.
And one of the first things they talk about is a digital detox.
A chance to unplug.
And they suggest starting with unplug Sundays.
So a whole day offline.
A whole day, yeah, which sounds both amazing and kind of terrifying in our world.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Like, what would you even do with yourself?
Exactly. But it's about creating space, right, to reconnect with things offline.
Yeah, like going for a hike, reading a book,
Sure, yeah.
having an actual conversation.
Yeah, and they also suggest curating your feed, right?
Being intentional about who you follow.
Exactly. So choosing to follow accounts that inspire you, that make you feel good.
And unfollowing those accounts that make you feel bad.
Yeah, like those perfect influencers
Yeah.
that just make you feel inadequate.
Yeah, sometimes you got to hit that unfollow button.
You do, and this one seems so small, but it could be huge, right?
What that?
Turning off notifications.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Because it's like taking back control, right?
Absolutely. You're not constantly being interrupted and pulled back in.
Yeah, you get to decide when you engage.
And they have this other idea that I love, right? Embracing imperfection.
Oh, yeah.
Like sharing those less polished moments.
Yeah, like a blurry picture of your pet or just like, a random thought you had.
Like, hey, I'm folding laundry.
Yeah, exactly. And they have this great phrase, boring is the new cool.
I love that.
It's so true, right?
It is. It's like a rebellion against this whole idea that everything has to be perfect and filtered and amazing all the time.
Yeah. It's about being real, being authentic.
And it can be so freeing.
To get a more psychological perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alex and Sam, they talked to Dr. Luna Perez, the psychologist,
Okay.
and she points out this really interesting thing, right? That we're naturally wired for connection
As humans, yeah.
as humans, yeah, but that algorithms can kind of exploit that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, by creating these echo chambers.
Where you only see things that you already agree with.
Exactly, and it can lead to this feeling of being detached from real life.
Yeah, like you're living in this little bubble.
Yeah, yeah, and Dr. Perez, she offers some really practical tips too, right?
Mm-hmm. Like what?
Like setting scroll limits, you know.
Okay, like a timer?
Yeah, a timer or using apps that block distractions.
Oh, like freedom or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Which is interesting because it's like we need these tools.
To help us manage our own behavior.
Yeah, to help us manage these platforms that are so powerful.
And she ends with this really powerful message, right?
Mhm.
You're not a content machine. You're a person.
And I think that's something we all need to hear.
Absolutely. Like your worth isn't defined by your follower count.
Exactly. Exactly.
You're valuable just for being you.
Yeah, and taking all this in, it's like understanding how these algorithms work, even just a little bit, it can be really, really helpful.
Empowering.
Empowering. Yeah, it's not about demonizing social media, right?
No, not at all.
It's about making more conscious choices.
About how you use it.
Yeah, about how we interact with it.
And I think the key takeaway here is awareness, right?
Awareness.
Like once you understand how these platforms work, you can start to make decisions that are actually good for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And building on that idea of taking action, right? Inspired by influencer rehab, here's something to think about, right? What if you set aside a little time, maybe an hour, maybe an afternoon, maybe even longer, if you're feeling brave, and you just significantly reduce or completely disconnect from social media?
Like a little experiment.
A little experiment, yeah. And just notice how you feel, what thoughts come up, what you end up doing with that time.
That's a really great idea.
It could be really revealing, right?
Absolutely. It's a chance to really understand your own relationship with these platforms.
And maybe make some changes, right? If you want to.
Exactly. It's all about what works for you.
It's about finding that balance.
The balance that makes you feel good.
Yeah. It makes you
Yeah.
feel like you're in control.
In control of your own digital life.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe you'll even find that boring is kind of cool.
Maybe it is.
Food for thought.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
Until next time.
See you then.